How far will classic World of Warcraft go? Hopefully far, considering retail's a pile of piss.
BlizzCon's happened, and as many of us expected, turns out that Classic WoW will be going beyond Wrath of the Lich King. The first 3 expansions
Obviously.
in Vanilla, TBC, and Wrath were kind of a given that they would rerun their course, and whether that
Yeah.
was for nostalgia's sake at first, revisiting raiding you missed back in the day, seeing how the classes were back then, whatever it was, they've all had their merits, and at times showed why certain things ended up changing too. Blizzard have also seen this moment coming for a while now, as have many of us. Cataclysm is a big changing point for Classic, and for those wanting to continue reliving more Classic experiences, there is
Arguably the biggest, because a lot of people are going to say Cataclysm was where World of Warcraft ended. Because the story, as far as we know, ended with Arthas. That was the final thing. Done.
Era, Hardcore, and most recently, Season of Discovery. The
Nice.
choices have never been larger for somebody to find a version of Classic WoW they like, and I think this push for vanilla content over the last...
Okay, let's be real. What happens after this Season of Discovery? Is it Season of Discovery Burning Crusade? I don't think so. Burning Crusade kind of failed very spectacularly. If they do Season of Discovery Burning Crusade, they will need to remove pretty much honestly almost all attunement in my opinion, because it's just horrible, and make tanks a lot better, because the biggest problem was, well, honestly, the tanks in Burning Crusade when I played. Hey, I stopped playing Burning Crusade because tanks were an issue. If your guild tank was not online, and tanks were never online for some reason in Burning Crusade, it took 5+ hours to get a single basic dungeon group going for attunement. It was impossible. I quit because of it. It was just stupid.
6 or so months has not been any coincidence. But Wrath is soon to be wrapping up, and the future of the classic expansions are only heading...
You know what I absolutely love about this? Dude, Artist looks like he's supposed to be that 40-year-old dad bod type of dude. Looking at this, is just that's what I'm getting here, okay? Not gonna lie.
Of the classic expansions are only heading forwards. So how far do you think they're going to go? Like, realistically though. I mean, even back in 2019, people were already joking that I can't wait for BFA Classic, or then Shadowlands Classic, or now Dragonflight Classic. Personally, I'm looking forward to the World Soul Saga Classic, but memes aside,
Nice.
Classic is catching up with retail, there is no doubt about that. Whereas Vanilla to Kata originally took about 6 years between 2004 and 10, Classic has covered that same ground in 4 and probably a half years from 2019 to 2024, depending when Kata...
Dude, it's been already that long, hasn't it? Wow. You don't feel it.
actually comes out, that is. The difference maker has been, nearly without exception, the duration of the final content phase of each expansion. From Wrath and beyond, final patches often went on for 9 to 12 months.
I still have not done Kel'Thuzad a single time in my life, except in Wrath of the Lich King, when, you know, it was available then. But man, I have not done Kel'Thuzad a single time in Classic. And I probably never will at this rate. I hope that Season of Discovery actually changes when you encounter which bosses. Like, it swaps it around, you know? That we get AQ40 and Kel'Thuzad as the first raids, and, you know, then Ragnaros is the hardest raid in the game. That would be hilarious.
Sometimes over 1 year, looking at Mr. Pandaria and Warlords of Draenor there. And whilst final raid tiers are the culmination of the expansion with all the overpowered gear and us fighting the big end boss, given that
it's actually the culmination of GDKP runs, where the gold pots go into the multiple millions.
The choice these days, the Blizz devs aren't going to have us sitting on one patch for an entire year, or for anywhere near that long, ever. Unless it's Classic Era, I guess, but that's its own separate thing. I mean, take Ulduar for example. It was one of the most hyped up and beloved raid tiers ever for Classic, and for many of us it ended up feeling as though it went on for too long, and that came out on January 19th and Trial of the Grand Crusader was June 22nd, and that 6-month time period does feel about as long as any major content patch can really go on for. And I think a big part of the content being faster paced.
I originally quit Wrath of the Lich King exactly at the release of Ulduar.
Is just that.
Oh no! I think I didn't. I quit after Tournament of the Crusader.
On average, people get through stuff much faster. It's a side effect of it being a re-release. You know what's coming, what to prepare, what the hard fights will be, which classes are gonna go well, all of that stuff. Back in the day, they had class balancing, a lot more fixes or updates.
Back in the day, you had people raiding Molten Core and Pirate Hats when they were, 75% dumber. Okay? Back in the day, it was different, for sure.
To broken content and so on. People would have been playing a lot more and re-rolling a lot more too. The phrase flavor of the month re-roll really came into prominence during Wrath, and for a good reason. Also, I think a ton more people PvP'd back in the day as well, which is inherently a very replayable thing to do and doesn't require this constant stream of new content the same way that PvE does.
I actually played for the PvP back then.
But anyway, we are, without a doubt, catching up. So how far does this journey go? Because we can never fully catch up, can we? Diversive as Cataclysm is compared to the original trio, it's still World of Warcraft. This is probably one of the most consistent gaming franchises of all time. People have been saying WoW's dead or the next WoW killer is around the corner for years, and it just keeps on going. After all, what do you think would keep more people playing? Moving on to the next expansion, transferring characters across and carrying on with whatever expansion that may be, or Blizzard to come out and...
There is no WoW killer at this point. Even World of Warcraft failed to kill itself, and man, it tried. World of Warcraft tried to off itself real hard. It got the rope, it got a tree branch, it googled a little bit about, British healthcare and whatnot, where they literally give you a calculator where you're supposed to input your height and weight, and then it tells you how much rope you need and how far it needs to go. Man, World of Warcraft tried everything, and it failed to kill itself at the end of the day. It is what it is.
And say, so yeah, go play one of the classic...
But it did seriously maim itself. But I think we are past the point where we're like, oh, we need a World of Warcraft overtaker. No, we don't. We just need something to, take our attention away from something else for, a couple of months, and then we can play something else again. Now it's probably going to be Throne and Liberty for me, honestly. But currently, Season of Discovery does fine. But, at some point I'm going to get bored, and then I'm going to try something else. And I don't care if that something else is going to be played by 1 million people or 10 million people. As long as I get my fill in, I will not care at all.
Versions of the game, or I don't know, raid ICC forever, I guess. The people who prefer vanilla already have choices, and as popular as Wrath of the Lich King raiding is, I don't think that many people are going to be sticking around forever in ICC. So will the Dragonflight classic memes be true one day? In a few years' time, will there be posts and videos saying, you know what, Warlords of Draenor really wasn't that bad? Maybe there will, And I'm going to go ahead and say something which I think makes sense, but I'm still not quite sure I fully believe it yet. And that is, I can see Classic going as far as Legion, as each expansion up to that point has enough merit to where enough players would want to re-see the content, and it would be worthwhile for Blizzard to do. But let's go into it in a bit more detail for each expansion though. Why will they be worthwhile? And that means starting with Cataclysm. First up, it's going to be getting a few more features from later on in the game, such as an update.
Not waifu.
Auction house, as well as the retail transmog system. Those are the two we've heard about so far. Kata will also trend towards more difficult PvE content. It's a middle ground where you don't just want the bosses to fall over, but you also don't want to be progressing for 2 or 3 months. It will offer an environment where 10-player raiding guilds can exist and get the same levels of loot as 25. There will be more challenging 5-man content too, and the whole Titan Rune dungeon system will be in Cata as well. The LFD will also now be a core part of the game. There will be rated battlegrounds for PvP enjoyers.
Wow.
I keep hearing that Cata and Mists of Pandaria were good if you mainly played WoW for PvP. And I mean, there's gotta be a few people out there who prefer the updated world post-shattering and the new quest lines and stories. But I do also believe that Cataclysm will be a bit of a stepping stone for Mists of Pandaria, sort of how people called TBC.
Yeah, I think it's gonna completely fail at Mists of Pandaria. Like, pandas were a mistake. Monks were a mistake. All of these classes are a mistake, honestly. All of the new classes are honestly a complete another failure. Because no new person wants to play this game, because now you have to choose between 273 trillion classes that all magically somehow still feel the same, and you can't really tell the difference between them. Everyone looks like a Christmas tree. Nothing feels unique because everything is too unique. Okay? Even the decorations in cities don't feel unique because they're too unique. It's dumb. It's really, really boring. I think Cataclysm is going to see some success. Now, recently, initially I thought that Cataclysm was going to see pretty good success, but recently I have changed my opinion slightly because of season discovery and whatnot. I think Cataclysm is going to have far too much competition to be successful, but I don't think it's going to fail. I think Mist of Pandaria is going to fail. Because again, just from an aesthetic point of view, if Cataclysm is kind of cringe, then again, pandas and monks are super cringe. It is what it is. It's like, Cataclysm signified the downfall. Mists of Pandaria was the downfall. Even though people are saying it's not a bad expansion. Hey, and you know what? I believe it. But everything that Mists of Pandaria represents as change is the downfall. It doesn't matter if the downfall doesn't feel that bad. It 100% is the downfall in any case.
That for Wrath of the Lich King, because as memed on as MOP was back in the day, it really does have a lot of strong positives. So what will people play Mists of Pandaria for? Monk, of course, brand new class. If you're a monk main, do you want to go back and see how that started off? If I was, I would. There's class tuning, big reworks compared to Cataclysm. The talent tree's revamped again, and now we have 1 talent point per 15 levels, which are often modified depending on your spec. Also, a lot of class abilities and passives are specific to choosing a talent tree now. For example, if you want Fireball, you have to be a Fire Mage. There was definitely a lot less choice in how you built your class and spec in Mists of Pandaria, but Blizzard
I think identity mattered more, honestly.
essentially knew exactly what options you had, and because of this, they put a ton of power into every class. There was just something about Mists of Pandaria class design which felt as though everyone was overpowered, and it just kinda worked. Also, there was Vengeance tanking. This was probably the best expansion there has ever been to main a tank. So Vengeance in short means when you take damage, you deal more damage. And it was a way for tanks to keep up on DPS and of course threat generation. Now this mechanic existed in Cataclysm too, but in Cata it's pretty tame, and the maximum attack power was capped at 10% of your health. And you know what they did in Mists of Pandaria? They made Vengeance a bit harder to stack, but they removed the cap, and tanks went absolutely crazy on DPS. It was not uncommon for your tank to be top DPS on certain encounters. In fact, tanks would actively try to take more damage between their own cooldowns and externals to stack Vengeance as much as possible. Blizzard got rid of Vengeance and replaced it with Resolve in Warlords.
I have never heard of this mechanic. This is the first time I hear about this mechanic.
Of Draenor. So Mists of Pandaria is the only expansion where tanks can realistically be your top damage dealer, and I think that's pretty exciting. And then there's raiding, Throne of Thunder and Siege of Orgrimmar especially. Mists of Pandaria
if I remember correctly, people said Throne of Thunder was good.
Had some great raids
Really
that
good,
I already
in
know
fact.
I'd definitely give a go again. I did quite a bit of Siege of Orgrimmar back in the day, but I didn't get the chance to see too much of Throne of Thunder, and people rate both of these raids very highly. There were challenge modes too. These were kind of the early adopter for Mythic Plus, but they were very different from it. Challenge modes set your gear to a certain level, and depending how fast you completed the dungeon, you got different rewards, such as a really good looking transmog set. Again, there was PvP as mentioned earlier. I keep hearing good things about Mists of Pandaria PvP, so I thought I'd bring it up here. There's also a big push for collection enjoyers in Mists of Pandaria. There are so many things to gather out in the world. There's battle pets. I don't know, I kind of liked it when it was out. Back in Mists of Pandaria, I came up with a strategy to use 2
Nah. F the Pokemon.
pets, and then level another on all the epic and legendary pet fights, and then I'd sell the ones I got to level 25 afterwards. That was the main way I made gold back then. There was the Brawlers Guild, which had some challenging fights at the higher ranks, and when you didn't overgear them, those 2-minute enrage timers weren't easy. The Timeless Isle. For me, Timeless Isle is the iconic zone with just the loads of stuff to do, and it worked so well they kept doing it in future expansions. We had Tanan Jungle in Warlords of Draenor, I guess Broken Shore or Soromar for Legion, Nazjatar and Mechagon for BFA, and so on. There's going to be a bunch more too, but those are the things off the top of my head that came to mind for Mist.
Was Mists of Pandaria, or was it Cataclysm, where everyone started getting personalized loot? And because I don't remember when it started because I wasn't around for it, but in Wrath of the Lich King, gear still felt special. Why couldn't I say that? I don't know, but it felt special. But after that, it no longer felt special, you know, because it felt like you don't work for your gear. You're like, oh, I found just an upgrade. Wow, got it from a raid. Do you care? No. One of the best things about Classic is definitely the feeling of getting an upgrade. Even if you're not actually banking for it, even if you're not actually wanting it, it still feels really good in Classic getting a gear upgrade and knowing that most people have less gear than you. It is what it is. But in either Cataclysm or Pandaria, it changed. Everyone suddenly had all of these good gear pieces and whatnot, and not a single gear drop that you got felt special. And if it felt special, it felt special for roughly 3 seconds. Then you equipped it, then you forgot it exists, and you probably got an upgrade, 5 days later that you still didn't care about. Man, they really dropped the ball on gear. I understand the idea of giving people gear upgrades is good, and it is good. There's no denying it. But man, the way that Blizzard did it completely ruined the fact that gear felt special.
Pandaria, but
and the fact that they completely forsake horizontal progression. And they did the complete tier system, you know. This is the new raid, item level X. This is the new raid, item level X bigger. You only do this so you can get into the bigger item level tier raid, and that's how it goes. At least some horizontal progression is good. At least some, you know? Make it so that the first raid drops some kind of magical item for a very specific class that's better than the raid 3 big patches, 3 new raids later. It feels good. Come on, do it.
We all know what happens after Mists of Pandaria, and this one will be the hardest stepping stone to get over in my opinion, and it's going to get memed on so hard if it's announced one way or the other. Warlords of Draenor Classic. Imagine that. Looking back now, it's honestly comical how little content this
the true downfall
expansion had. It released on October 14th, 2014, and Tanan Jungle, that's basically the final major content patch, came out on the 23rd of June 2015. There were 2 major patches.
Time travel should be, by the way, ignored by virtually almost every gaming company, every storyteller, or anything ever, because it's hard to nail time travel correctly. And here's World of Warcraft suffering tremendous loss and being called shit by almost everyone breathing at this point, and they're like, we're gonna attempt the hardest story to tell in science fiction or in storytelling in general, time traveling. Yeah, we are really good at not telling stories, so we're gonna attempt it. Obvious disaster. Obvious complete disaster that, by the way, the World of Warcraft lore is still trying to recover from. They have done everything to just wipe alternative Draenor off the face of existence. They have done everything to do that in World of Warcraft at this point, almost.
In total, and 3 raids. I mean, what's not to like if there's so little content? For real though, I do think people will say that this expansion wasn't so bad in a few years' time. And there are things to like, such as the speed of leveling through Warlords of Draenor. It was super fast to get characters to level cap because of just the XP given in zones and bonus objectives. Even years later when I was leveling a character, I'd get them through Gorgrond in an afternoon and be done with the expansion. And you can't say Warlords of Draenor didn't have some absolutely brilliant raids. Highmore was okay, wasn't my favourite, but Blackrock Foundry and Hellfire Citadel were both very well looked back on. Classes got big overhauls again in Warlords of Draenor. This is the expansion when the big pruning happened. Gear also swapped main stats if you respect too. Well, your armor did anyway. Also, multi-strike was a thing for this expansion. I have to say I didn't mind garrisons at first, to be honest. When you were actually doing stuff to complete the buildings, filling out your stables and so on, it was okay. But like much of Warlords of Draenor, once you got over that...
Warlords of Draenor is infamous for completely destroying the economy of World of Warcraft because of garrisons. Because garrisons just gave you so unbelievably much gold. And you can bet bot farmers took advantage of that. I haven't heard stories of this, but I'm pretty sure I just missed them. That there were whole bot farms that just spent all of their days in the garrison just doing mission tables, and that was it.
Initial bit of content, there really wasn't much else to do, and should Warlords of Draenor happen again, it would be a brief revisit to alternate Outland. That final patch they had was well over a year in duration, and it did not have much content to start with, so there just really isn't much to re-release. And in case you're thinking, no, I highly doubt Blizzard would try and put back in some of the cancelled content, such as the missing Netherstorm zone for one, which was supposed to be named Farallon. And to be honest, I don't think it would be worth doing for them. It would kinda have to come with new content, including a raid. And is Warlords of Draenor Classic going to be the most popular version of Classic? You can already guess the answer to that. But at the end of the day, what is something they'd probably kinda feel obliged to do to get to the next expansion? Legion. Legion, with changes to some of its known issues, could be a very fun re-release, you know.
Legion lore-wise was cringe also. I mean, it's the Infinity Army. Like, the premise is good, don't get me wrong. But man, again, they did it so poorly. The lore is like probably the World of Warcraft. The lore is probably the biggest joke, because if you consume World of Warcraft lore like, you know, at a very, very moderate pace, and you know, just overarching stories and whatnot, it's kind of fun. I do that. A lot of people probably do that. But the moment you stop and think about the lore for a second, nothing makes sense. It's the most brutally stupid world in existence where not a single shred of anything makes sense.
Things to address include legendary drop rates and bad luck early game. Some people got their Biss, some people got Cephas's secret. And Cephas was not good on launch. It got buffed later in the expansion, but launch Cephas, you did not want that. The artifact weapons pretty much locked you into one spec due to the artifact power grind. Never mind being Alton friendly, Legion was respec unfriendly. That hasn't happened before in WoW, as Mythic Plus was a new piece.
Yeah, I heard that. That's pretty funny.
Of content, there was the endless Maw of Souls artifact power and legendary chant spam. Artifact knowledge as a catch-up was good, but it probably could have come a bit earlier, especially on a re-release. And overall, if Blizzard did re-release Legion, and they were just a bit more generous overall with artifact power and legendaries, it could be a lot of fun. Possibly even have the resource.
Yeah, I heard that no one complained about the legendary weapons.
To craft legendaries in from the...
Especially Knifefu and Beyblade.
first major content patch. Class order halls were a great and thematic addition to the game. I like them a lot, even if they did split the player base up to some extent. I mean, the alternative would have been just standing about in Dalaran, and we already kind of have done that in Wrath. Mythic Plus, of course, that was a new addition to the game, and it offered a different path for endgame players. It was repeatable content, infinitely scaling, suited 5-player groups, just something different than raiding, really. Suramar has to be the best open-world hostile city Blizzard have ever made, and the story went on through there as we progressed in the expansion. We did big numbers in Legion, like damage numbers got completely insane. You'd be doing...
Anytime your damage exceeds 10k, I think you have failed at a game. Because damage numbers are stupid. You know what? Look at this damage meter, for example. I can't click on myself for some reason. Well played, OBSer. Well, I can't, but there's the damage meters here. If you're dealing to almost 300 million damage, you don't care about the majority of the number, okay? It's stupid. The moment you don't care about the majority of the numbers in the number's too big. And I think the cap should be at 10k always. Anything above 10k just becomes redundant almost. You know? Well, you can make an argument for a little bit more, but you know, definitely 100k is too much. It is just a redundancy at its finest.
millions of DPS. Yeah, it was kind of dumb, but on the other hand, big number is kind of fun. The Mage Tower was a...
No, big number is kind of fun for people who think Diablo 3 is a good game. Big number is not fun.
Great single-player challenge. It started off as a big flex, getting your hidden appearance early, and as the expansion went on, you could overgear them and get them a lot easier. Just overall an amazing bit of content to test yourself. A new class, can't forget about that one, Demon Hunter. We can see how they started off. There were also a lot of solid raids.
Demon Hunter, the thing that they did, because they were literally desperate to get their player numbers back up, so they released a half-baked class with 2 specializations. I don't think they even added the 3rd specialization for Demon Hunter. But yeah, it's a literal half-baked class because it has 2 specializations because they needed to rush it out. Jeez.
The Emerald Nightmare was undertuned, especially on Mythic mode. Trial of Valor was a bit unexpected, but posed a greater challenge. Nighthold was probably my favourite of Legion. Then afterwards we had the Tomb of Soak Garrus, which went back to overtuned again, before finally Antorus the Burning Throne. There were trinkets such as Whispers in the Dark, which gave you a crazy haste proc, Convergence of Fate would reset your class's cooldown super fast, Draft of Souls would just one-tap anyone in PvP with Battle Shout, all that good stuff. And it always felt as though there was something to do. There would be daily and weekly things to do, but we were kind of not as used to it yet, so it didn't feel as bad. All in all, Legion was a big turning point coming off the back.
Yeah, the dailies. These dailies, like, oh my god, you get a purple item. It's a purple item. Are you happy with a purple item? God, I hate. They come. Around this time, I think itemization was just completely in the gutter. I think this is, by the way, the reason people loved those super cool artifact weapons so much, because at least it felt like an item that you can actually play and use for longer than 5 seconds until the next zoomer item replaces it with stats that you don't even care about. Itemization is just so in the garbage bin in this point. It's sad.
So it didn't feel as bad. All in all, Legion was a big turning point coming off the back of Warlords of Draenor, and Blizzard would try to carry on some of the trends which seemed to make it successful in the next 2 expansions. But
carrying on with the trends that makes it successful in an unsuccessful game, by the way, not a smart idea.
They didn't turn out so well. I think going beyond Legion is going to be a hard sell, as beyond this, not only were the subsequent expansions...
True. They could... Battle for Azeroth completely destroyed Sylvanas, the greatest character in World of Warcraft. Sylvanas was epic. All of her existence. Vengeful, spiteful, powerful, smart, a leader. She was everything. She used people, she abused people, she did everything. For a goal, for an ultimate goal, be it good for her, be it good for everyone else, she was a good character. She was a great character. Until this point where she completely just got... well, that nothing she did made sense any longer because that's the Blizzard way. Hey, if you like a character in World of Warcraft, hope that Blizzard don't pay attention to them and they just forget they exist. At least then their character is safe from becoming an absolute laughingstock like Sylvanas.
Less popular from a player point of view, but some of their core issues just kind of didn't go away. First was that feeling of losing all the power you just had in Legion. Your DPS went from millions to about 10k or so at the start of BFA very early on. And it wasn't just numbers being smaller, abilities were gone, artifact weapons were gone, legendaries were disabled. BFA was an expansion in name, but it felt as though we all went backwards. There was more reliance on daily, weekly, and even monthly tasks to boost player engagement. And if you fell behind, you stayed behind. Azerite armor had less interesting bonuses as whole when compared to legendaries and artifact weapons. Would essences feel better if they were instantly account-wide when they came out? And even later than that in BFA, do you want some random corruption BOE proc to count for more damage than all your class abilities put together? It just doesn't seem as though these systems are redeemable, even on a re-release. And then comes along Shadowlands with its covenants, its meaningful choices, and Blizzard's reluctance to back down on their vision, and that didn't go so well either. And I think about
Shadowlands is just the ultimate peak of trash, though. The Shadowlands didn't make a single lick of sense. They completely destroyed all the lore in all of the game, in all of history, retconned what's left of it into trash, and man, okay, you got Bastion. These afterlives made absolutely no sense. You know the Necromancer looking afterlife, by the way? Do you know that lore-wise, anyone who goes to that afterlife can pick how they look? Yeah, they literally have the freedom to pick how they look. And all of them are literally picking between two different looks. That's the stupidest thing in the world.
Back-to-back
Oh, and then anima is some kind of battery for the afterlife, because that makes sense. Oh, and the jailer's a Roomba with swords attached to it at the end. Yeah, that makes even more sense. And then there's well, you know how there was the god of death? Well, turns out there were multiple gods of death. But wait, Shadowlands came out and there was the god of death. Oh, and then there was the god of death. Oh, and then there was the god of death. Oh, yeah. Great times. Truly great times.
Revisit of BFA in Shadowlands most certainly is not going to be it. As for Dragonflight, will it end up being seen as good enough to sit through these two expansions?
By the way, I love that this is promo material.
As for...
Look at this. Generic 3. That's your armor set. There you go. Generic 3. Now you can play hide and seek.
Dragonflight, will it end up being seen as good enough to sit through these two expansions though? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see on that. The thing is, even if we do get to a point where there is Legion Classic, there are so many more questions to be asked. What happens to all the other versions of WoW?
Remember when Medivh came in World Warcraft 3 as a Raven? And remember that? Remember Medivh? Yeah, Kaka's the same. God, I hate this game.
Oh, we would have gone through. Is this just a one-time thing? Because right now it seems as though there's only demand for vanilla to be replayed on a large scale. Will these servers reboot as progression servers where they go through expansions? Maybe players could vote for when an expansion drops. This is what EverQuest have done with their progression servers. What about
that? Sounds stupid. Everyone's just gonna vote the fastest possible. That's gonna be it.
The level capped characters in this environment, where do they go? Do they transfer to retail? Is there some kind of prestige system? Do we just force them to restart? At the end of the day, WoW kind of needs content to keep moving forwards. This is generally how MMOs work. apart from Classic Era it seems, but again, that's a bit of a special case. Equally, if things did get as far as Legion, by that point in time the game has changed enormously. At the moment with Wrath, some people are going back to vanilla due to the changes. More will for Cata, and things will keep going in that direction as we progress. Then again, a sub is a sub for Blizzard, and if enough people are playing to make it worth making, then it's going to make financial sense. They have said that
I need to renew my sub, by the way, for Season of Discovery.
the surveys for Cataclysm actually
I think it's running out pretty soon.
out some pretty positive results when it came to people asking to
Also, I almost have my priest at 25. I'm currently almost half a bot until 22. That's gonna be my third character. Gonna literally get 0 prebis. Probably gonna just LARP as a healer because, you know, penance is OP.
carry on forwards. We may not have seen those results ourselves, but then again, so many things have happened in Classic just because enough people have asked for it. Season of
Can healing be done without an add-on, by the way? Do you see in the default raid icons when someone's about to get healed for X? Because that's kind of important, probably. Because I'm probably not even going to try and get the runes for AoE healing. I'm probably even not going to have the talent points for healing. Penance is OP.
of Discovery is also now underway, and I expect it to be very important in the future of Classic content in terms of what people do and do not like about this season. But if there's one thing that's been true for World of Warcraft...
No, actually, Shadow over Death is way more OP. You can just get a mob to 50% HP and then you just one-tap it, it's great.
Nearly 20
But it has 12-second cooldown, which sucks.
years now, it's that it just doesn't seem to go away. And I really don't
Okay, Shadow over Death plus Twisted Fate is definitely faster to actually level than Penance plus Void Plague, but it feels slightly off to level with that. So I honestly think I'm going to switch back to Penance and Void Plague for, you know, the rest of the levels, because Penance has a lower cooldown, and you know how it is. It is what it is.
expect Classic to either in one way or another. Anyway,
Even though, again, Shadow Word Pain is literally OP for leveling.
just thought that would be an interesting topic to
I mean, Death, not Shadow Word Pain, but Death.
cover today, because Classic is seemingly set on a path to go a lot further than many people would have imagined. But how much further? That remains to be seen. What do you reckon though? How far will
Classic will completely off itself at Mists of Pandaria, that's my opinion. Anyway, that was absolutely fantastic, Willy Wonka. Anyway, this was Quizzer Said, thanks for watching. Watch Willy, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.